Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Recently, I have noticed in the romance genre, there has been an influx in illustrated covers. And it got me thinking, why illustrated covers are becoming a thing? Is it because they're cutesy? Is it because they appeal the eye with all of their bright colors? Or is it because traditional romances, people feel like their covers are not acceptable? You can't read those books in public without being judged. So what is it about illustrated covers that people love so much? Can we trust illustrated covers? Are they going to give us the sort of romances that we want? Are they going to follow the illustrated appearance? Like, do the illustrated covers match what's on the inside? Or is it just a way to draw people in? So for this reading vlog, I will be reading 4 romances. The first book that I will be reading is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is a romance between 2 writers. One is a romance writer, one is a literary fiction writer, and they swap places because they're both in a writing rut. I will then be reading Party of 2 by Jasmine Gilroy. This is about a girl named Olivia who works at a law firm, and at a party she meets Max, who is a politician, and she really has no interest in dating a politician. She's never had any interest, but she kind of feels like Max is not your stereotypical politician. He's not what you think he is. He actually has some depth, and she might be interested in him. I will then be reading I Owe You One by Sophie Kinsella. So this is about Fixie. After her father passes away, she takes over his fix-it hardware store, and someone comes in and wants their laptop fixed, and he scribbles an IOU on a coffee sleeve with his business card. But then when her childhood crush Ryan comes back into the picture, she kind of has to use the computer owner Sebastian as a fake dating situation to make Ryan jealous or see what can be done about Ryan. So it has that fake dating aspect. And then the last illustrated cover romance that I will be reading is The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. This is the story of a girl who is engaged to be married, but then the groom breaks it off, and it kind of appears as if the brother of the groom is kind of the reason that it gets broken off, and the bride is a wedding planner. And as far as I remember, she has to plan the wedding of the brother's wedding, and I think some things happen or something. I'm gonna read these 4 romances, and I am going to let you guys know how I feel. I don't personally like illustrated covers. I think they mislead. I have read several illustrated romances prior to this, with romances with illustrated covers, and I have read some regular romance covers. The romances with the illustrated covers that I read were fine. I don't really feel like the illustrated covers made a difference. They could have just been regular covers, but would they have done as well? Because the 2 most popular romances right now are those 2 Talia Hibbert books, the Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and the other one, and they're illustrated covers. And there are a lot of people who have slammed romance on their channels very openly that are suddenly into romance, and they're reading romances with illustrated covers. So let's find if there's something behind it, or if it just gives romance respectability. I'm gonna start with Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I will update you guys with my thoughts once I am a little bit into it. So I just finished reading Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I think I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5 stars. I liked banter and the witty back and forth between the characters. I think that they're building up from enemies to friends to a relationship was nice. There's a lot of plot going on in this story, and I feel like some of the plot points are lost to other plot points. So the overarching thing of the story is that They are two writers that are kind of in writing slumps. So they have a bet to write each other's genres. So she is going to write literary fiction and he is going to write romance. And whoever wins is going to get shouted out by the other author, basically. Obviously, it buds into a romance, but there's other plot lines going on. The main female character lost her father, and so she's dealing with the grief of that, but also she found out that he wasn't exactly who she thought he was, and so she's trying to reconcile in her head the father that she knew versus the father that he, or the person that he actually was. They're also dealing with trauma in the male main character's past. And then there's also a cult plot line where he is trying to investigate some cultish activity in this area. A lot of it just fell off and it didn't seem like anything could be done simultaneously. I felt like either they could be having a romance, or they could be writing a book, or they could be investigating, or they could be dealing with their separate issues. They couldn't be doing it all at once. And in addition to that, the conflict was super contrived. It was hinges on miscommunication or just not communicating at all, which was annoying because one, I hate that trope, and two, the female main character was I'm not gonna let this tear us apart because we don't communicate. And then she did just that, and it was just annoying. So I liked the characters together and separately. I agreed with their relationship. It wasn't written poorly, sentence structure was fine. The steaminess was there, the sex scenes were written pretty well, but it just wasn't plotted very well. The conflict was weird. As far as does the cover match the story? No. So to me, when I see an illustrated cover, I think fun, whimsical, a good time. And this was definitely very dark, and not very dark, but there are some dark undertones, and it's dealing with some heavy topics. And then when you see the cover of two people laying on a beach reading books, that's just not the feeling that you get from this. The setting is a beach, and they live on the beach in their beach houses, but it just didn't have that beachy feeling, in my opinion. So no, I don't think the cover worked very well. So I think the next one that I'm going to start is the one with fireworks and stuff on the cover. I can't think of what the title is right now, but I think I'm gonna start that one. I was gonna update you guys on Beach Read half of the way through, but there wasn't really anything to say. So I'm gonna read this and I'll update you guys at the halfway point if I have anything to say. So I just finished Party of Two and I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So this is the relationship, a California senator and a lawyer who just recently moved back to California. I didn't really like any of it. I liked it until about 20%. I didn't really like them together. Their relationship was boring, and the smut was fade to black, which is fine if your your couple is actually interesting, which they weren't. And I didn't like the whole politician aspect, the whole having to hide their relationship and her not wanting to be in the public eye thing. It was just boring, and it made the conflict boring. I was not a fan of it at all. There wasn't really any of it that I liked. I hard skimmed, and it's 340 pages. Hi guys, so I am about to start The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa, which is the one about the woman whose future brother-in-law breaks up their wedding and they have a romance down the line or something like that. I got cut off from my last clip, but what I was saying was I hard skimmed that book, but I do feel like the cover of that book accurately represents the book and its steaminess versus its funness and all of that. I do love the cover of that book, and I think it's an accurate representation of what the book is. So I'm gonna start The Worst Best Man, and I will update you guys later. It's a busy day at the office, so I don't know how much reading I'm gonna do, but I am definitely gonna try to knock it out today. It's 356 pages, so longer than the books that I've read so far, but hopefully it's better. I've heard great things about it, so I'll update you guys when I am into it and have some thoughts. Hey guys, so I shot that clip earlier today when I was at work, and while I was at work I owe you one, this one, and I DNF'd it at 20%. I didn't want to DNF it for this video, but the main character was really annoying and I just didn't really jive with the writing style, and it was 460 pages. What business do you have? There are more well-developed fantasy stories that are less pages than that. Whatever. And so I'm still going to read Worst Best Man, so I will update you guys when I have some thoughts on that. I'm not very far in, I'm only a couple chapters in, and it's decently written, it's okay. The characters' personalities aren't like super clear. They aren't like really distinct, but again, I'm not very far in, so hopefully that'll like clear itself up as we go on. Basically, the summary that I gave you guys earlier was wrong. So I was correct about the brother breaking up the marriage or the wedding. But what happens is that he breaks up the wedding, and then they end up having to work together. So the ex-fiance, the female main character, and the ex-fiance's brother end up having to work together. And I think the brother and the girl like have to work side by side like every day. She's a wedding planner and they are run a hotel or something that she's trying to be employed with, or something like that. Like I said, I'm not very far in, but I'll update you guys when I have some opinions on it. So good morning, guys. So I am like an hour and a half into Worst Best Man, and like in the audiobook, and I'm enjoying it still. It's not too bad. I think it's written well enough that I think I'm gonna eventually like the couple and want them to be together. They're still not super distinct, like I was saying earlier. In the audiobook, the guy narrator, which his normal voice is fine, like I like his normal voice, but he tries to do like female voices and other guy voices, and it just does not work. Like it just does not sound good. But I am home from work today, like I'm off, and I need to work on some video stuff, so I am going to be listening to the audiobook. It's like 10 hours, but I listen on 2x speed, so I should be able to finish it all today. I will update you guys like once I'm in it and some stuff starts happening. Okay guys, so I have finished Worst Best Man, and I would give it 3 stars. I think that this was filled with a lot of like stereotypical popular romance tropes and nothing else very distinguishing. Like nothing about it made me like think that it was anything spectacular. The couple wasn't bad together, but I didn't feel like they had to be together, and if they hadn't ended up together, I would have been like, okay, like it's fine. Side note, if you plan on reading this, don't listen to the audiobook, because the narrator for the man, it's bad. It's really bad. It definitely lessens the experience. Let's wrap up the things that I read for this video. So I read Party of Two by Jasmine Gilroy, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I DNF'd I Owe You One, and I read The Best Worst Man by Mia Sosa, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. So I think I learned something that wasn't my intended lesson. I have learned that this type of romance, the like fluffy, more like traditional story, is not my thing. Like it doesn't do it for me. It's not the plot lines and the story that I'm looking for. I'm looking for something grittier. I want them to struggle to be together, and these just don't do it for me. The illustrated cover thing, like I definitely know going forward that like if I see a romance with an illustrated cover, it's probably not going to be for me. Obviously I'll like read the summary to see, but it just is indicative of a type of romance that just doesn't do it for me. They're not bad, like by any means, and they're very popular and lots of people like them, but they are just not gritty enough for me, I guess. Like I want a different kind of spice than the spice that these provide. That being said, most of these had pretty decent like sex scenes. I Owe You one was a fade to black, but the others like were okay. They were decently described, but none of them were like intense, if that makes sense. I know illustrated cover, probably not my thing, but that's not to say that they're bad books. That's not to say that I think one has more of a place in literature than the other one does, but I definitely think that the illustrated cover makes people feel like it's more acceptable for them to read the books. And it kind of fits in with the type of book that it is, because I think that a book that looks like this has a certain connotation to it. It's filled with all smut, which some of them are, and if that's what you want to read, that's fantastic, but there are books that have covers like that have good storylines as well, with well-developed characters, good writing, like everything about it can still be good just because that's the cover. And just because you don't think that that cover is acceptable doesn't mean that it's not a good book. And in the same token, an illustrated cover doesn't mean that it's a good book or that it's acceptable or not acceptable. It doesn't make it more okay for you to read this book just because it has an illustrated cover, because at the end of the day, you can read what you want. You shouldn't feel embarrassed if you're reading a book with this cover versus a book with this cover. You shouldn't feel embarrassed about liking what you like. Reading is supposed to be a hobby, and you shouldn't let anybody talk down to you about what you like to read, because it's supposed to bring enjoyment to your life, and if someone tries to take that enjoyment from you, then screw them. So that is my rant. That is this video. Comment down below your thoughts on illustrated covers or any of the books that I talked about in this video, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Thanks so much.